Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. Hope you had a nice weekend and you're ready for some crazy stuff. So we're going to talk a little bit about the vote tonight that took place in Parliament, what the impact it will have on the Labour Party going forward will be. Also mentioned the hypocrisy from the Tories and the right wing over this. Also want to talk a little bit about the prison releases that are taking place because of overcrowding and the rioting and the Tory leadership. So sticking with criminals, we'll go to the Tory leadership. So I just want to start off with this funny story first of all. So people who may not be familiar with this, the Irish government is now going to be given 13 billion euros. 13 billion, not 3 billion, not 13 million, 13 billion euros. Now, this is in relation to a disagreement between the Republic of Ireland, the government in the Republic of Ireland, Apple, and the European Commission. So the European Commission has said that Apple has to pay its full taxes in Ireland, and the Irish government have been protecting Apple from having to pay full taxes because what Ireland's GDP per capita, or GDP is, maybe not per capita, but GDP is inflated in a sense because of the role the American companies play. So, for example, a lot of the money that's produced around the world for Apple or for Google or for other companies, a lot of it is filtered through Ireland where the tax rate is lower and they declare it as income in Ireland. Now, the Irish government have sort of turned a blind eye to all of this because, you know, it helps the exchequer somewhat. They don't get all the money, but they get some of it. And it maintains the American presence in Ireland. So if something were to change, maybe these American companies would up sticks and leave. So the European Commission has said, look, this can't continue. And they have fined Apple, I believe, Google as well, Google for a few billion, but Apple 13 billion euros. So Apple will now have to pay the Irish exchequer 13 billion euros. And the Irish government doesn't want the money. This is the ironic thing about it, or not ironic, but funny thing about it. You know, we have Keir Starmer in Britain saying, look, we need to cut back. We need to find money to fill this gap. And the Irish government is being literally handed billions of euros for nothing. And they're saying, no, we don't want any of it. Because they're concerned that it would result in Apple, Google, and some large American companies leaving. Now, it's been interesting. So some commentators, David McWilliams, who writes for the Irish Times newspaper, I believe, he wrote, what would you do with 13 billion euros? And some of the comments here were quite funny. Buy an apartment in Dublin 4. Dublin 4 is, I think, the most expensive part of Dublin. Somebody said a bike shelter in every town in Ireland. So this is in relation to another story, a bit of corruption that went on, or maybe not corruption, but an interesting story that took place last week where Dáil Éireann, or the Irish Parliament, I think I covered it on the last live stream, where they built a bicycle shed that cost 375,000 euros. Now, if you were to build it outside the Parliament, it would cost probably about 10,000 or 15,000 maximum. But it cost 375,000, and there's been a bit of a scandal over it. So some people have been asking, well, with 13 billion, you could build a new bike shed or build a few bike sheds, or maybe one in every town, just to make fun of both situations. But it's insane. The Irish government has been given 13 billion euros, and they're saying, no, we don't want it. Anyway, I just wanted to touch on that story because it's quite funny. Finally, we have somebody calling out the media when it comes to Kwasi Kwarteng. Remember Kwasi Kwarteng, the guy, even Longford, yes. Remember Kwasi Kwarteng? He's the guy who worked alongside Liz Truss. He was her Chancellor of the Exchequer, and he was the one who delivered the mini budget to Parliament. And then, of course, Liz Truss backed him to the hilt and then decided, actually, he's not all that popular anymore, better get rid of him, and then she resigned shortly after. But for some reason, the likes of ITV, the BBC, Sky News, and others keep inviting on Kwasi Kwarteng. Some people have compared this to, inviting on Harold Shipman or someone like that, to give advice on care in the community. But Kwasi Kwarteng has been invited on to talk about the economy. He's been invited on to talk about politics. He's been invited on a number of occasions to talk about a whole range of issues. For what reason, I don't know. You would imagine somebody who crashed the economy or was blamed for the economy being crashed. Okay, technically they didn't crash the economy, but they triggered a collapse. Surely somebody like that would go away into hiding, would be afraid to show their face in public. But no, Kwasi Kwarteng, happy to show his face in public.
Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng on the programme as one of our panellists. You weren't very impressed by him?
No, because again, it's the disconnect, I believe. So when I switched on one morning, forgive me, and Kwasi Kwarteng was talking about something or other.
We forgive you for switching on, Carol. What we're concerned about is you may have been switched
doing a
off.
newspaper review or something, right? And I thought, Kwasi Kwarteng, old Etonian, and he crashed the economy along with his mate Liz Truss, and then people watching. I just thought, good grief.
You obviously didn't tune into the programme where Adil Ray took him to task.
I love that.
But it's not about taking him to task. It's about what the F is he on the TV in the first place? It's not, let's invite Kwasi Kwarteng on, who destroyed the economy, and we'll have somebody interview him and challenge him on something. Kwasi Kwarteng, aka Kwasi Accounting. Well said, Freckle Bunny. Quasi accounting. It's insane. They defend it by saying, well, he was challenged by somebody. No, the point is not that he was challenged by somebody. The problem was having him on in the first frigging place.
Doing all of that.
Well,
hopefully it's also not bad to hear what people say.
Yeah.
Give him a chance.
Give him a chance. A chance at what? A second chance? Allow him back in, to excuse why he crashed the economy. Maybe he can become an MP again. Or is he an MP? I think he resigned or he lost his seat. I don't remember. Liz Truss is gone for sure. But Kwasi Kwarteng, he was an MP for a while. These people can be rehabilitated. Maybe he can become Chancellor of the Exchequer once again one day. Can you imagine any other situation where somebody messed up so badly that people lost their homes, people saw their mortgages triple, people were forced to see their rents increase because their landlord had a mortgage, people struggling, even at a time of crisis, a cost of living crisis, and that individual is then put on TV, not every day, but quite regularly. I think Corbyn needs a second chance. Jeremy Corbyn wasn't even in power, and the criticism they had for him. I'm not Jeremy Corbyn's greatest fan, okay? But and I said before, I think he's a decent human being, but I think when it came to his leadership, there were some problems, and Brexit was a problem as well. But I'm not going to go over that again. But Kwasi Kwarteng had been proven to be incompetent. And then he was invited onto all these shows to give his advice on stuff. But then didn't you ask, you look at Nigel Farage, lied through his teeth about Brexit and then was invited on all these shows to give his advice on what the UK should do. Brian, thank you so much for that super chat. Inviting Kwarteng to talk about the economy is like asking Jimmy Savile to discuss the age of consent. Well said, yes. There's quite dark humour there, but it's true. What was the motivation for these people? Is it like, oh, look, Kwasi Kwarteng's on, he has probably something interesting to say? Is it about driving revenue to these, driving views to these channels? Is it about revenue? Is it about advertising? Is it about clicks? Is that what it's about? Honestly, is that what motivates ITV, Sky News, Channel 4, not Channel 4 here, I don't think he was on, the BBC? Honestly, I don't get it, honestly. Alistair, thank you so much for that kind comment there. That's there. Hi Max, just wondering how many Scottish Labour MPs didn't vote tonight. I heard only one voted against the bill. so much for support, Scottish people. As far as you know, they all abstained. So none of the Scottish MPs. A bit of a problem for Labour Scottish MPs is none of them turned up for the debate, but none of them voted against or voted for the bill. So they abstained. So they were sort of covering their arses a bit. Like a number, like I think in their case, it's very different. They're in a very tight spot because if they voted against it, they'd lose the whip. If they voted for it, of course, they would be hounded out of Scotland. Abstaining means nothing. No, abstaining is about covering your arse. I'm not going to put myself into a position where I'm going to it puts you in a position where you can say, well, I didn't vote for it, and it's not on your record as voting for something. So they knew it was going to pass. They knew that they couldn't stop it, so they said, look, I'm not going to put my neck on the line here. I have more respect. I keep coming back to this point. It should have been a free vote, but Starmer didn't want a free vote, but we'll get to that later. So, moving on to this story, of course, the main one for today. And look, I think there are two ways this can go. This can rumble on for a bit until winter and become an embarrassment for Keir Starmer. Or what's more likely is that within about 48 hours, it will be forgotten about because something else will be in the news. This is how things normally happen. Big story. It'll be probably a criticism against Starmer at PMQs tomorrow. But after that, by the end of the week, we will not be talking about the winter fuel allowance because people will move on to something else. The media, it's all media driven. So if the media says, look, there's no more mileage in this story, let's move on. And the likes of Farage and others will move back to immigration. And I think Farage has already done that. He was ranting and raving about immigration. And you had Richard Tice complaining about people being released from prison today. Foreign prisoners. So I think Reform UK realise, there's not much mileage out of this. Let's move on. And once the vote is over, there's not really much politicians can do. So I think it may rumble on a little bit longer, but by the end of the week, we won't be talking about it. And I think it's a bad policy. I think it's bad politically and it's bad economically. It doesn't recover a lot of money. So they said that they have to fill this 22 billion pound black hole. We're talking about 1.5 billion. A wealth tax would bring in about 20 billion. So it would make more sense to go with a wealth tax than to remove this. No, look, the argument for it, of course, is that you're giving money to people who don't need it. Richard Branson is a pensioner. He doesn't need this, but he's getting this winter fuel allowance. So politically, it's difficult to justify giving money to people who don't need it, the richest in society. But as we keep saying on this channel, and you guys have saying as well, if a universal system is normally cheaper to run, and nobody falls through the cracks. So when you have a means-tested system, there will be people who are just over the line and they won't receive the payment and they will suffer the consequences of that. And this is where there is a risk that a lot of people will lose the payment. Now, a lot of people will have to sign up for it where they hadn't signed up for it before. So it was, I believe, something a bit more automatic. Now they'll have to fill out paperwork and stuff like that. And there's a risk that they will make mistakes and not receive the payment. So this is a real, there are real concerns. I'm trying to be as honest as possible. On the one side, politically, you can say there's no justification for giving money to people who don't need it. And on the other side, there are going to be people who will fall through the cracks and will not be caught by the safety net. Brian, thanks so much for that super chat. We should send Boris Johnson round to pensioners' house to waffle on about Brexit. They might need the aircon. Sorry. Let me. I'm breaking down. They might need to turn the aircon on just to let alone not need heating. Yes. Have Boris Johnson around, enough hot air to reheat the most insulated, scarce home in Britain. Poorly insulated, I should say. Poorly insulated home. Now, Boris Johnson could reheat them with his waffle. Well said, Brad. I love Brad's super chats, Brad's comments. They're great. Anyway, let's back to this main story. So millions of pensioners will lose winter fuel payments as government wins vote on cut. So MPs voted to cut the winter fuel payment for all but the country's poorest pensioners. A Tory move to block the measure was defeated 348 to 228 votes, a majority of 120. The division list showed Labour MP John Tickett was the only rebel to support the Conservative motion, while no vote was recorded for 52 other Labour MPs. Poor John. Will John lose the whip now? Like, it's pretty crappy being the only one who voted against the government. That's, you would be expecting a little bit of solidarity, but it seems John is the only one, and he'll probably lose the whip, I imagine, because that was what the whip's office was saying they were going to do. If it's a 3-line whip, you have to support this. So people obviously abstaining, a significant number, 52 MPs abstaining. This is a significant majority, but it didn't, it was going to pass. The government were going to win the vote. Max, I have a question. Has Labour to do something to help common people like us and the working class? Yes, they do. I keep saying this, and I was saying it before the election. Labour need to start turning things around. They need to improve public services, and they need to improve wages and benefits. Because if they don't, people are going to look around and go, things are not improving. And if people don't see any real material improvement, they're going to vote the party out. In the next by-election, the first by-election of this new parliament will be interesting to watch, because it depends where the by-election will take place. I don't know whether there'll be one this year. There could be one this year. There could be one, we might have to wait until next year. But there will be by-elections. MPs will mess up and they'll have to resign, or someone may die, or somebody may decide to quit politics or something. So there will be by-elections. And depending where they are, it could be embarrassing for Keir Starmer. If there's a few by-elections altogether, it could cost him his position. So there would be mounting pressure on him to resign. So but Labour will need to start to turn things around. I don't expect it this year, but they will have to start making real changes next year. Now, one of the arguments, it seems, that's been pushed around is that Rachel Reeves believes that, okay, this is sort of removing the plaster early, injecting some pain now so that you can provide something better in the future. But that relies on growth. So Labour will improve public service. This is what they're saying. Labour will improve public services in the future, but they need to make these difficult choices now. Their words, not mine. But they have to make these difficult choices now, and once those are out of the way, they'll be able to deliver better things in the future. But that's connected to growth. But as I keep saying, in order to grow the economy, you need workers. In order to have workers, you need to change the immigration system. And to change the immigration system, you need to face down the likes of Farage and the Tories. Now, is there that level of backbone in the Labour government? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Could the losses in Scotland for Labour hurt them? Labour doesn't need Scotland. They don't need the MPs in Scotland. So Starmer was, was it 20 MPs, 30 MPs in Scotland? I forget the exact number. So Labour could lose all those MPs and still hold a majority. So Scotland is not important to Labour. Labour MPs in Scotland will have to start showing, 37, thanks, Killer. Labour in Scotland will have to show that they're doing something. See, it's a very difficult position. I don't want to go off on a tangent here too much, but it's a very difficult position for Labour MPs in Scotland, because they have to show a certain amount of independence from Westminster, because Westminster is not popular in Scotland. So they'll have to show some level of independence, house jokes, but they can't show too much independence, or they're going to run into conflict with Westminster. Now, at the same time, MPs in England will be piling pressure on the central government to do something for their constituents. Look, we need a new school, or we need a new hospital, or we need money for this, that, and the other. So they're going to put pressure on Westminster, on Starmer and Rachel Reeves. Now, who do you think Reeves would listen to? English MPs or Scottish MPs, considering that Scottish MPs are not needed to hold a majority? If English MPs start creating problems, then Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, will have to listen to them and give them money to keep them happy. Now, she can ignore all of them, but that's going to be bigger problems. So if push comes to shove, she's going to satisfy English MPs over Scottish MPs. That's the reality. Scotland is far away politically, and it's far away geographically from London. So, Scottish MPs will have very little leverage. If they form a rebellion, 37 seats, it's not a significant, and that would be them all rebelling together. I don't really see that happening. And then if they're not able to deliver something, they're going to get kicked out. So this election was terrible for the SNP, but if there's a by-election in Scotland where a Labour MP is sitting, it's possible that seat could flip to the SNP. Anyway, shouts of shame came from the House, could be heard in the House of Commons chamber as the result was announced. The cut means that from this winter only those claiming pension credit or other means-tested benefits will receive help with their fuel bills, whereas previously the allowance was available to anyone over the age of 66. Once again, it's not bringing in a lot of money, this change, but it's costing huge amounts to the Labour Party politically. The move is expected to reduce the number of pensioners in receipt of up to £300 payment by 10 million, from 11.4 million to 1.5 million, saving the Exchequer 1.4 billion this year. It's not a huge saving, like 1.4 billion. Chancellor Rachel Reeves announced the squeeze in July as a result, as part of the series of measures to fill the £22 billion black hole in public finances. However, some MPs from Labour's side, as well as charities and opposition MPs, have called for a U-turn, saying the policy will leave less well-off pensioners with a heartbreaking choice between heating and eating this winter. Look, what about everyone else? See, this is where I want to get to the hypocrisy. The Conservatives and their friends in the media and the likes of Reform UK are fully on board with the idea of removing support for people on benefits. Many people on benefits, 40% of people on benefits are working. They need the benefits to survive. And the Tories and Reform UK and others are happy to see those benefits reduced, cut, people kicked off benefits. People who are on benefits that they need to survive. But as soon as we mention pensioners, and I'm not criticizing pensioners, this is not about pensioners against everyone else. This is the cynicism of the right-wing politicians. As soon as we mention pensioners, oh my goodness, we can't allow pensioners to go without this extra payment, even if it means some of them don't need it. It's disgraceful. There are many more people who are going to struggle this winter because the benefits don't cover energy bills and stuff like this. The money they receive from working doesn't cover the bills that they have to pay. But those people will be forgotten because they're not politically useful. While the Tories, who've been cutting benefits and treating the poorest in society like scum over the last 14 years, suddenly have a heart when it comes to pensioners. Oh my goodness, these pensioners, oh my God, how so many pensioners are going to die this winter because of Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer, one of them was saying, has blood on his hands. When pensioners were dying last year because they couldn't afford to pay their bills, because they were afraid to turn on it wasn't so much they couldn't afford to pay the bills. They were switching off their heating because they were afraid that they couldn't pay the bills last year and the year before. And many of them died from the cold. Did we hear any complaints from the Tories? Did we hear any crying from the Tories? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Zero. Did we hear anything in the media about this? Very little. Channel 4 covered it. Sky News covered it in a segment for about 5 minutes. Was there a word from government? Well, don't worry, we're going to look out. We're spending more than ever before and stuff like this. It's political cynicism. And this is not picking sides. I'm not picking sides here. I think the policy that Labour is going down is a terrible policy, both politically and economically. So I'm not picking a side here. But what the Tories have been doing over the last 14 years is potentially worse, is much worse, because it wasn't just affecting pensioners, but it was affecting everyone. I think of COVID and the cost of living crisis, there was no mention of pensioners being threatened by the government. It's hypocritical, hell, Max. I posted a comment on Twitter about how the right wing were complaining about businesses being closed and elderly people being looked after during the pandemic. They were saying, fuck the pensioners, open the businesses. And that was both politicians, mainly politicians in the House of Commons. And look at, we can't be closing down the economy because some old people who are about to die anyway. Wasn't it Boris Johnson who was saying, let the bodies pile high? We need to reopen our businesses. We need to get the economy running again. And now suddenly they have a heart for pensioners. Oh my goodness. What about the poor pensioners? They're scumbags. Sorry. Sometimes these things have to be said. The right wing, Max making friends, the right wing, during the pandemic, the ones who actually believed that there was a pandemic, they were anti-lockdown. No, don't close down the economy. Don't close shops and businesses. No, they have to stay open. The economy must be made a priority, not people's lives, not ordinary people. And when it came to old people, a lot of the comments I read online were like, well, to hell with them. They're going to die anyway. Or let's just lock them in their homes, but let the rest of us, continue working and stuff. Because they were prioritizing business. They were prioritizing profit. Now suddenly, all of these people have a heart. They care, oh my goodness, what about the poor pensioners who are going to die this winter because they can't afford the heating? Don't apologize for calling them scumbags, Max. I called them something worse. No, but it's frustrating because now we have the media talking constantly about this and no mention of people during the pandemic. As I said, very little mention of people during the pandemic who were struggling, who couldn't pay their bills, who were dying, and Tory politicians and their friends in the media saying, no, we need to reopen. It's disgraceful. It was disgraceful at the time and it's disgraceful now. Let's move on to. I just want to cover a little bit more on this. I don't want to go too much into this story because as I said, the vote took place. Not much can be done about it now. They're not going to U-turn. But these are some of the comments about it.
I hesitate to say it, but there's a little bit of toughening up here, I think, that's required. They're in the business of governing. There are hard times ahead. This is a policy that I think can be justified, not least because Labour are keeping the triple lock. Pensions are going up. They'll go up again next year. Okay, it's hard and it's hard news to deliver to your constituents, but this is a much stronger argument than some of the things you're going to be faced with in the months and years ahead.
Do you think that you're very behind this, and it's refreshing to have someone who just says no, yes, this is correct? Do you think they should have done this? Is there anything at all they should have done differently here? Because a lot of people are saying this is too fast, it's too far, there's a cliff edge, and it's not fair.
I don't think given the circumstances of this is happening now and the general election was in July, I don't actually think there's anything that realistically could have been done, within, the 80 days or so that Labour have been in power to make this situation better. Of course, with a blank sheet of paper, hindsight and all the time in the world, you would design this.
No, it's not hindsight. It's not. There's no. Because if you keep saying, well, there was nothing they could do. But a wealth tax, 20 billion will be brought in under a wealth tax. So you can't say there's nothing that could be done. But they won't entertain the idea of a wealth tax. They won't even respond to the question, why don't you impose a wealth tax? I forget what his name is. He's one of the ministers in the Treasury. He was on the radio, on BBC 4 Radio Today, or Radio 4, I think it was. And he was being asked constantly, what about a wealth tax? What about another way of raising this money? And he wouldn't answer the question. He didn't say, look, we can't impose a wealth tax because X, Y, and Z. He ignored the question, which made it worse, because at what wealth would they do the tax? Well, somebody was talking about 1% on wealth over, I think it was £3 million. No, it wasn't McFadden, it was somebody else. The guy with the beard, I forget what his name is. But I don't know the ins and outs of a wealth tax, but I've heard from a number of charities and organizations that a wealth tax, the TUC, I believe, was supporting a wealth tax. So they said that it would bring in about 20 billion. Now, their numbers haven't been disputed. So, but there's no, no, my God, it would be great if it was Richard Murphy. But it was, see, the problem, if they're not refuting it, if they're not saying, no, actually that would be nice to hear if they said, look, we can't bring in a wealth tax because we don't have the time, or, it's complicated or whatever, but they're not even answering the question, which is concerning.
This differently, you would look at things, for example, like a social tariff. I've heard Ros Altman argue that perhaps you could tax this benefit so that people, particularly those higher earning pensioners, could receive the benefit and then have it clawed back. It's another complex process. It would take a long time to legislate for, but it would be fairer. I just don't.
It would have been actually politically more savvy. So this idea of what you do is you keep this in place, but in the budget you increase the tax to claw this money back from richer pensioners. That would have been fine, and it would have been in the budget. So whatever noise the right wing could have made about it would have been muted by other aspects of the budget. I think, once again, this was a bad move. I think it was Richard Murphy, actually, who was talking, or David Blanchflower, who was talking about how you could have, a higher tax in the budget on pensioners who are richer. And then this would cover the extra cost of removing... Jonathan Reynolds, thank you so much, James. Jonathan Reynolds. This would cover the cost of removing, of having an alternative to the winter fuel change that they're doing now. And there'd be no political cost to them. Or the political cost would be minute because, as I said, it would be part of the budget.
I think there's anything you could have done at a preemptive level. And actually, look at what happens in Scotland. At the same time, this is devolved in Scotland, and the SNP are doing exactly the same thing, because there is an inherent unfairness here on this particular issue when you're comparing it to things that children and young families and those in poorer communities are faced with. This is one of the least tough, difficult things.
So Larry the Cat says, how about taxing fuel companies to get the money back from it? Yes, they're still making massive profits. Progressive tax income tax system like in Scotland, 6 bands, it's a no-brainer. She's from an ex-Labour MP, I believe, or ex-Labour leader, I think, in Scotland, or she's related to Scottish Labour in some way, so she hasn't mentioned the 6 bands, which is maybe a bit convenient. Reminder on Labour good stuff, increasing pension by 500, removing no-fault evictions, removing fire and rehire, cutting helicopter for Rishi Sunak, Rayner dancing better than me. Or, what's her name, Therese Coffey. So there's positives. And see, this is the thing. And well said, Kevin. He's pointing to positives, ending fire and rehire, increasing pensions by 500. But none of this is being talked about because the right-wing media is not interested in talking about positives. They're only interested in talking about negatives. And you have to adjust for that. You have to account for that when you're thinking, okay, what policies can we roll out? When should we roll them out? And I think they've dropped the ball here, both economically and politically.
Things that lie ahead of us.
Okay, guys, I want to move on to another story. Oh no, yes, I have to show you this video. This was no, where is it? Yes, when it comes to the prison release. So, and I want to get to Tory hypocrisy in just a moment. But when it comes to the prison release, so what's happened? The Tories have left the prison system in an absolute shambles. it meant that many people had to be released early. 40% of their, in some cases, 40% of their time in prison. They're released after 40% of their time. Is this a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Well, here are some former prisoners talking about it.
A man walks out of prison with a duffel bag, £86 in cash. Well, where's a man going in life? You know, I'm saying go to probation. What am I going to do when I go on probation? I'm going to go probation, I'm going to sit there, I'm going to get bored. I'm going to start going back into my old ways. Maybe I might smoke drugs again, I'll go out, I'll start committing burglaries at night. Next thing you know, I'll be back in jail. I've watched it year after year deteriorate, the funding. Then it started with the stock, and then things started getting broken, not repaired, and it's just deteriorated. Now there's rats running around the wing. I mean, even in the daytime, you can see rats openly running around the wing. Early release schemes is not going to help nothing, is it? When people come out, they need help, miss. You know what I mean? No illusion, this is for the government's sake only, yeah? They are not releasing anyone because they're having a good day. They're doing it because they're under pressure with the prison system, yeah? And that's the only reason they're doing it, otherwise we would not be getting released today.
What's your plans for today?
Again, we're having this conversation. This is something that should have been dealt with in the prison, yeah? I should be able to come out of the prison now and say, yes, how you doing, miss? You're right, yeah, they got me a job down the road, I'm going to see my boss now, and then I've got to go on probation. I've got a very busy day ahead of me, yeah? But no. I'm going to go down to the Tesco's, get a Jack Daniels. I might think about taking some drugs, but I'm not going to. And then I'll just work out my life from there because no one else has bothered to help me. I'm being honest, I've got not much faith in that sense. Every time before I've been recalled. So I ain't got much hope this time. This is only for the government's benefit, we're all being released. Most of us will be back within 28 days, yeah?
And he's right. He's right, because if there isn't anything for people to go to, if they're not able to reintegrate into society, then of course they're going to fall back into their old ways and then they'll be reoffending. See, this is where, you know, the new government is going to get the blame. They have to pick up the pieces. The Tories have not invested in the prison system over the last 14 years. This is the frustrating thing about this way democracy works. Labour get into power and they start rebuilding public services. They start investing a bit more. Do they invest enough? No, obviously. But they're doing a lot better job than the Tories. They're starting to undo some of the damage the Tories have done. Then after a few years, people get tired. People are not seeing good results. Or the media have convinced people, look, actually it'd be better to have the Conservatives in power. You know, Labour is stale. You need some fresh blood. You need to get the Tories back in. And the Tories promise, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to build 40 new hospitals. We're going to do this, this, and this. And people vote for them. And people vote them back into power. And then what do they do? The longer they're in power, the more damage they inflict. They burn everything to the ground. And then the new government has to come in and the new government has to fix everything from scratch. And it's going to take time. How are you going to create opportunities for this man is not just releasing him from prison. You need to have a job system. You need to have a probation system that's fully funded. The Tories, of course, didn't fully fund the probation system. So this guy, you know, if he's not being checked, he's obviously going to be like, I'm not saying he will, but people like him will likely get involved in crime again. You know, if there's no probation system, there's no check, there's no balance, there's no control, they'll be back doing their old habits once again, and they'll be back in prison again. Back to a prison where they were a few months earlier. And there's no rehabilitation there. There's no system. It's become a sort of just to put people away, punish them. You're a bad person, we're going to put you away for a few months or a few years. And you're locked up there and you can't get back into society. But eventually they will be back in society, and you want a system, you want a mechanism for people to integrate, to have something. Because if he had a job, as he pointed out, if he had a job, he'd be getting ready to do that job. He'd be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to spend my money on. This is my plans for the future. He has no plans for the future. So destiny will decide on his behalf. Alistair, thank you so much for that super chat. Dugdale is lying. The Scottish government were forced to cut this as the funding will stop as Westminster cut it max. So Dugdale was the previous person speaking. Thanks, Alistair. And I keep coming back to this point when it comes to the Scottish Government. The Scottish Government's hands are tied when it comes to how much money they can spend. And now this year, the block grant is smaller. But the powers remain the same. So something will have to be cut. And, when a government is desperate, they're going to have to cut back on things that are less popular for the public, like prisons and stuff like this. Thanks so much, Alistair. I hope, and I think we all hope, that the economy will grow, that Labour will do a good job, and this will increase money for public services all over the UK. But if they don't, then things are going to get much, much worse. And it's going to open the door for the likes of Farage. A few years ago, it was pie in the sky to imagine Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister. But there's a path for him to arrive in number 10. I don't want this to happen. I think it's remote at this moment. But there is a path for Nigel Farage to number 10. It's a scary scenario, but it's possible. He joins the Conservative Party. The Conservatives continue to crash and burn. There's a by-election. Reform UK win the seat, or Reform UK top the poll. On the Conservative side, on the right-wing side. There will be growing calls for Nigel Farage to join the Conservatives. It may not be now. It could be after the next election. But there will be calls for Nigel Farage to join. And then if he joins the Conservative Party, within a number of months, he could be leader of the Conservative Party. All he needs is enough votes from the members of Parliament and the members of the party. And then he's in. And then he's leader of the Conservative Party. And then, of course, he's going to punish or attack Labour for not achieving. Say, if I was in charge, we would have 0 NHS waiting list. If I was in charge, we'd have no immigrants. If I was in charge, like before. We've seen it before. Today is World Suicide Prevention Day. Thanks for that, Reagan Elite. So it's a very difficult time for so many people. Families as well. The path is first past the post. Please take note that this is my blood pressure max. No National Front as Prime Minister. Yes. Let's move on to something a little bit relaxing. Let's take a little break for some comedy to lighten the mood somewhat. Hope you enjoy this.
Have you had an accident that wasn't your fault? Would you like to have...
Sorry, let me just give you a bit of context. Every advert in 1999, some of you are probably not old enough to remember 1999, but it was a bit like this.
Have you had an accident that wasn't your fault? Would you like to have an accident that wasn't your fault? Do you want to consolidate all your windows and doors into a massive hall in the side of your house? Call now and get an unsecured personal hall with no down payment for just $999.99. You what? I said $99.999. Pay now, buy later. Just one tablet gives your washing machine the curse of eternal life. That's the Harry Bludgeon guarantee. Where's me wife? I already told the police. You what? I said $999.99. Twat. And the dirty scone. Have you had an accident that wasn't your...
It's insane. It's a bit like the ad, the one I did some weeks ago, where it was ads. Every TV show from the 2010s, and it's like somebody walking around, an estate, a housing estate, with an angry personality. Anyway, so we get to Tory hypocrisy. Here is Tory hypocrisy on full display. Let's have a listen.
So can I, Madam Deputy Speaker, now rather more gently, rather more quietly, make an impassioned plea to those sitting opposite? Look to your conscience. These measures, you know in your heart, no, I will not give away. You know in your heart that these measures are wrong. You know in your heart that the party opposite has broken their promises and that these measures are going to lead to untold hardship for millions of elderly and vulnerable people right up and down this country. You now have an opportunity to join with us and put a stop to it.
What an absolute scumbag. This is the guy, when he was head of the DWP, was talking about how he's going to save so much money by cutting benefits, by forcing people off benefits into jobs. And now he's talking about the poor pensioners. What an absolute scumbag. You know, he's not going to be leader of the Conservative Party. He dropped out. But, you know, this is the party we have to deal with. These are the scumbags who have been in charge for 14 years and ran public services into the ground and called people on benefits skivers, called them lazy, called them feckless, work shy, made sure that benefits were cut, and of course with the excuse, well, we're going to drive people into work. There are too many people sitting on their arse doing nothing all day. Yes, but 40% of people on benefits are actually working. That doesn't matter. We're going to force people off benefits. And now they're crying crocodile tears about pensioners. Once again, I keep saying this, I do not agree with the policy of what just went through Parliament. But spare us your tears, Conservatives. No shame. But then they never had any shame. So don't expect them to grow some shame anytime soon. Okay, guys, I want to read a story here about a new MP. Newly elected MP defends decision to run for Select Committee chair. Newly elected MP has urged colleagues not to overlook the 2024 intake as she defended her decision to run for the chair of the influential Select Committee only weeks after being elected. Marie Tidball, cool name, Tidball. It's like some sort of game or something. Do you want to have a game of Tidball? Said the historically large 2024 cohort of MPs could offer fresh eyes and fresh experience to Parliament and government as she bid to be the head of the Education Select Committee. Tidball is one of a handful of new MPs looking to be elected as heads of select committees when MPs vote on Wednesday, while others have already been made ministers. A rapid promotion of the new MPs caused disquiet among some colleagues who complain that the new set of Labour ministers are pushing out those with more experience. Now, this is an interesting question. Do you want somebody who's going to look at, education from a fresh point of view, or do you want somebody with experience? Now, is experience a good idea? Well, look at some of the previous heads of select committees. They were pretty terrible, even though they had a lot of political experience. So I'm a bit in two minds of this. You want somebody who's able to ask difficult questions, somebody who can command, somebody who has authority. And generally, when it comes to politics, you want somebody with experience, somebody who knows how to ask the right questions. And this is something you gain with experience. Because, when in a select committee, you could have the CEO of a company, somebody from a water company, from a regulator. You could have other MPs there. You have to be able to grill them. You have to be able to conduct also the committee, because the committees are really interesting. Buffering or just me? I hope it's just you. Sorry, Mark. But you have to be able to moderate. You need to have experience, I think. So it's better to have somebody with at least a bit of experience, as opposed to just somebody who's wet behind the ears. Because on the flip side, we have this. Tory traditionalist Christopher Chope put forward for modernization panel. So the Conservative Party have put forward a veteran parliamentary objector, Christopher Chope, for membership of the Modernisation Select Committee. Chope, a staunch right-winger and traditionalist, gained notoriety in 2018 for trying to block a proposal of making upskirting a specific criminal offence. So this guy is against making it a criminal offence to upskirt. Can you imagine what his internet history looks like? The proposal came in the form of a private member's bill and had government support, but CHOP blocked it by saying object, sparking fury from other MPs, including many Conservatives. CHOP has also objected to proposed laws to protect girls and from female genital mutilation. He's a wonderful guy, isn't he? Plans to host Global Women's Conference in the Commons. He's against that as well. And to granting a posthumous pardon to Alan Turing over his conviction for homosexual activity. What? That last one I didn't know about. He faced criticism in 2013 for referring to the common staff as servants. That's amazing, isn't it? Servants. These are people there to, to work in the House of Commons, and he referred to them as servants. How do these people get elected? There must be one of the safest seats in the House of Commons. Smog will be more suitable than bringing Britain into the 19th century. The future will be bright in the 19th century. Thanks, Brad. Yeah, this guy is 1700s. My God, a Labour spokesperson said in a statement, Christopher Chope, whatever the hell his name is pronounced, has never seen a law that he didn't want to antiquate. Clearly, the Tories haven't learned anything from their election defeat and are refusing to change. He blocked a ban on upskirting, objected to the pardoning of World War II hero Alan Turing, and opposed ending the abhorrent practice of female genital mutilation. This is a man that the Tories should be. This is not a man the Tories should be championing. Yeah, it's like, why the hell would you want to put that guy in charge? He's. Can I use scumbag again? Is it apt here? I think we can get away with it. My goodness. Wonderful people the Tories are putting forward, isn't it? To head select committees. Like, Labour are worried, is it a good idea to have this person on? Do they have enough experience? And the Tories are like, who's the worst person we can find? Who's the scummiest Tory left, at the bottom of the barrel? Oh yeah, look, Christopher Chope there. Let's put him in charge. Maybe for the lulz. I know the lulz will be too modern. The reason Liz Truss failed is because the banks turned on her. They had no option. So this is a guy trying to rehabilitate the legacy of Liz Truss. Lalmenos, thank you so much for that super chat. Let's make Britain medieval again. It was wonderful. There were no smartphones, there was no social media, there was no what else? What else is the Tory? Well, there was no Brexit, there was no European Union back in the Middle Ages, so this is something Brexiteers could get behind. There was no NHS. They hate the NHS, so there was no NHS. So make Britain medieval again. That'd be a good slogan for the Conservatives at the next election, or Reform UK.
Liz Truss.
Well, I think Liz Truss was a good prime minister because she was promoting growth and how to get growth, but nobody wanted to listen to her.
Well, I really struggle to understand why ordinary members of the public could in any way think that Liz Truss was on their side. You can sort of get it with Nigel Farage because he puts on this fake persona of, I'm like a guy down the pub, I smoke a cigar and I drink a pint and, I have a bit of a laugh. I have terrible teeth and stuff like this. And, he can come across as a sort of, dodgy individual, but a nice guy to have a pint with. Not somebody you would leave. Would you feel safe leaving your wallet on the table if Nigel Farage was there? Probably not. But you're happy maybe to have a pint with him. I'm not saying for me, but generally this is the sort of feeling people have. Not trustworthy enough to leave your wallet on the table in front of him, but it's safe enough to leave your pint unattended with him. He's not going to spike it. So maybe not. So at least this is something that Nigel Farage has going for him. But what the heck has Liz Truss going for her?
was promoting growth and how to get growth, but nobody wanted to listen to her.
Well,
and what
people,
she was
hang
doing,
on. Enough people listen.
Sorry, is this somebody from the IEA calling in to defend Liz Truss?
To her.
Well,
and
Keith,
what
people,
she was
hang
doing,
on. Enough people listen to make that woman
finish
Prime
that
Minister.
point.
Keith, enough people listen to make that woman Prime Minister. And in order to achieve growth, she either inadvertently or deliberately blew up a small but clearly very important part of the pensions market, which affected bond yields, which affected the price of bond, which went through the roof, thus creating artificially and uniquely only in the United Kingdom extremely high costs to remortgage, which meant that listeners to this programme and many, many others couldn't get their houses bought or sold.
Well, let me finish the point I'm trying to make, and then you can come back to me. The reason why Liz Truss failed was because the banks turned on her, because the banks could see...
They had no option.
They had no option. With you. I disagree with you. I mean, we should have gone fought the banks, because everybody's taking about how rich the banks are, especially the Labour people, saying how rich the banks are, and it's the banks that are causing the problem.
So if everybody's selling UK government debt because the price is ballooning, and they don't believe that UK government is going to be able to pay back that debt because they've committed to huge amounts of expenditure without saying where it's coming from, what are you going to face them down over?
No, but that's not the issue.
See, this is the type of person who'd be like, what you should have done, Liz Truss should have gone into the bank's offices and banged her fist on the table. Said, you'll do as I tell you. Like, during the Brexit negotiations, when they were sending Lord Frost or David Davis to Brussels, and they were like, well, what you do is you bang your fist on the table and you say, we want X. And if they say no, you bang your fist even stronger. And then you tip the table over. This is the mentality of these people. Completely disconnected from reality. In the same way they'll be like, well, we just turn the boats around. The small boats, just turn them around. It's simple. See? Nigel had told us hundreds of times, it's very simple. Richard Tice keeps saying it and nobody listens. You just turn the boats around. As long as you don't have any follow-up questions, don't ask anything more than that. There, it's a perfect policy. Brad, thanks so much for that super chat. Another idiot the radio host can eat. Yeah, they're still around. It's sort of understandable if it's somebody from the IEA hoping to still hold on to their job. But, if Keith is a real person, Jesus will weep. So I want to cover a few more things before we finish for tonight.
The main thing.
This is insane. I just wanted to share with you this insane video. Okay, have a listen.
The main thing, as I said on breakfast, that this leaves me thinking is how much I would enjoy dating Jeremy Corbyn, because this sounds like a dream for me. Does it for you, Hadley?
No, and
no,
it made me
really. You amaze me.
It made me like Diane more than I've done in a long time. The fact that she, as she writes in the book, she's interested in theatre, music.
So allegedly, Jeremy Corbyn took Diane Abbott on a date to see Karl Marx's grave.
Art. She wanted to go to the National Gallery or something, and all Jeremy wanted to do was talk about Labour politics. And this reminds me of what...
Thank God I'm not dating anymore.
Why I never dated anyone involved in student politics at university, and why I could never get involved with anyone on the hard left or conversely on the hard right in this country, because they have no cultural hinterland. They're not interested in anything but their boring political subject. And it's so beautifully Corbyn that his idea of an exciting outing would be to Karl Marx's grave in Highgate. It's just perfection.
It's a romantic spot.
It's a graveyard. What are you, in a Tim Burton film? That's where you take your dates to a cemetery.
Patrick, let us hold hands and go together to the grave of Karl Marx.
Look, I listen to this with a slight unease because I'm about to out myself as someone who's taken my long-suffering partner to several Victorian cemeteries, Abney Park, Highgate certainly. Have we been to Highgate? Well, maybe we will this weekend now. Narrow gauge railways.
Yep.
And I think she likes it.
Suddenly questioning everything if it's not good enough for Diane Abbott.
Yeah. Yeah, well, look, I mean, but also, you know, you can talk about history. You can say, look at the funerary architecture. Didn't it used to be better back in the day? Talk about.
They're just grasping at straws here. Would you take somebody to a graveyard on a first date? I don't know. I'm not sure. It depends on the person. Some people like that sort of thing. Others don't. Okay. Final story for tonight, of course, is the Conservative Party leadership campaign. And it seems that Robert Jenrick is leading the charge with the Conservatives. And, you know, if Robert Jenrick becomes leader of the Conservative Party, it's a sort of win-win for Labour, because Robert Jenrick is not very well liked. He's a very toxic individual. Yeah, I think the Conservatives would actually do better. Like, I don't want them to do better, but I think they would actually do better with James Cleverly. James Cleverly is not very cleverly, as I pointed out on a number of occasions, but he's the most charismatic, I think, of all of them. Like, you have Priti Patel, although I think she's gone. Robert Jenrick, you know, the guy who paints over children's murals. You know, James Cleverly hasn't really done anything that atrocious, has he? Like, he called the Rwanda bill was it a batshit? He called the Rwanda bill batshit crazy or batshit. Robert Jenrick Tory, generic Tory. But see, Robert Jenrick used to be a Remainer. He was against Brexit, but then of course he jumped on board the Brexit bus and became a Brexiteer. And he wasn't, I believe, as right wing when he was a previous minister. When he was a minister in another administration. So he became right-wing for political purposes, of course. So I can imagine him at home, you know, with a pride flag or something in his bedroom or something, you know, and, you know, secretly cheering on, you know, pro-Palestinian marchers and stuff like that. But then putting on his far right uniform and then and calling them out as scum of the earth or something. So it's possible that he doesn't really believe the things he says. He's just doing it for the support of the Conservative Party in order to win power. Okay. Francois is using stilts. We don't call him Francois. It's Penfold. Okay. So get the facts straight. Brad. Thanks so much, Brad.
Mark Francois, your guy's winning, but as you know, the front runner never wins this one.
Well, let's wait and see how it goes at the conference. I mean, the first thing to say is commiserations to Mel Stride, who fought a very good campaign, did well in...
What campaign? Has anyone been watching this campaign? Like, you know, I'm a sort of political junkie, and I've been covering very little of this. I've been probably covering more of this campaign than other people have. And, you know, and it's very little. And I mention it from time to time, but no one gives a crap.
In the chamber today, but we've now got 4 very strong candidates to go to the conference for our members to interview and talk to. And obviously we're pleased that Robert is in the lead. He's won both ballots with a clear margin, so we believe he is the candidate with momentum.
His record is sketchy in office. He was an immigration minister over some period when we had record net migration and illegal migration. Won't members put that one on him?
No, because, you know, migration is now starting to fall as a result of some of the measures.
You can't say that, Penfold, Mark Francois, sorry. You can't be saying that, because as soon as you say that immigration is starting to fall, this clip will be used by the Labour Party to say, oh, see, it's succeeded.
That Robert put in place. I think a key thing for our membership is that Robert resigned on a point of honour because he felt there were weaknesses in the Rwanda legislation. He felt he couldn't honourably take that bill through the House of Commons.
No, he was a political opportunist. Okay, he saw an opportunity to benefit from this politically, and he resigned. It was not... He didn't want to be hitched to this. He knew it wasn't going to work. He knew he couldn't milk it anymore. So he resigned over this. There was no principle here. We're talking about Robert Jenrick. We're talking about, you know, somebody who, as I said, used to be a Remainer and then jumped on board the Brexit bus. Somebody who used to be a moderate and then has become who's ended up to the right of Priti Patel. Tory's own Sammy Wilson. Yes, Sammy Wilson's not a very happy camper, be it a naked one or not at the moment. There's a video I want to do on that probably some of the next days, so look out for that. Penfold, a bit harsh on David Jason. David Jason is actually, wasn't he a Brexiteer, or is a Brexiteer, which is quite sad. Used to like Del Boy. Anyway, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream, so I want to say massive. Give this a pause. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you so much for your support. There may or may not be a live stream this Friday because I've been invited to be a guest on a show. So this show may be live, but I will keep you posted on the community. So do check out the community page before Friday. Sammy's arse. No. So I will keep you posted on the community page about that. If I don't see you then, I'll see you next week. We will have a Sunday roast, a special Sunday roast this Sunday. So do check that out if I don't see you on Friday. Anyway, I'll keep you posted on that anyway. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much once again to everyone who came on. Thanks for your super chats. Greatly appreciated as always. And thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job as you always do. Hope you enjoyed this.
Welcome to Broken News. The UK government says it's committed to fixing the economy by going after those with what they call the broadest shoulders. They've begun by focusing on old people who are living lavish lifestyles on sometimes as much as £11,500 a year. Our reporter has more.
The central claim of Labour's election campaign was that they wouldn't hit working people with tax rises. But clearly, that slogan allows room for taking money off old codgers who've already done a lifetime's work. And while many UK pensioners have traditionally voted Conservative, pundits say the PM's plan is a novel way to kill them all off. It's clever stuff. Sir Keir Starmer says he's not afraid to take the difficult decisions. And nabbing 300 quid off old Granny Ethel in West Bromwich is definitely more difficult than making big fat Russian non-doms pay their fair share. In fact, the PM says, for example, forcing Amazon to pay their tax is actually too easy, and that's why he can't be bothered to do it. The Prime Minister, who still insists on calling Rishi Sunak the Prime Minister, has been urged to make a U-turn on the winter fuel allowance, but has rejected accusations from other Labour MPs that he's behaving like a Tory. In an email seen by Broken News, he told them, U-turn if you want to. The lady is... Sorry, I mean, me is not for... I'm not for turning. I mean, I'm not going to change my mind. In a public statement, the PM said, "We've always said those with the broadest shoulders should bear the biggest burden, and many pensioners have quite broad shoulders because of the thick, warm blankets they're forced to put around their icy, withered necks." In response, the Conservatives have very suddenly become extremely worried about the welfare of the working classes and say they're standing squarely behind the poorest in society, which in fairness is exactly what they would have done at the Somme. Back to you.
What a lovely story. That's all from Broken News. You're up to date.
Oh, they're always great. Peter, in there at the end, thank you so much for that super chat. On the next date, Corbyn took her dancing on Thatcher's grave. That's the best place to dance. So guys, have a great week. I'll see you probably on Friday. If not, I'll see you on Sunday. And if I don't see you then, I'll see you next week. Have a great week. Take care. And as always, stay safe. Good night.